Hello! If you've seen any of my previous videos, you know that I love traveling. I love the folk art, the colors, the flora, the fauna. But there's one thing I miss. It's my creative time that I have back home. So before I left home, I created some pendants, and you will see how to make those in this video, so that while I was vacationing, I could crochet some beautiful necklace chains for these upcycled vintage button pendants. Let's get started. First, I sorted all my buttons and picked some buttons and vintage pendants that I cast into molds so that I could use them over and over again using IOD non-toxic air dry clay. I'm using this 2-part putty mix to make my molds, but whatever kit you use, just make sure you follow the manufacturer's directions. I brushed each mold with some cornstarch before casting with the IOD Air Dry Clay. This way, the castings come out easily. The blue tiki mold that you see, I created over 10 years ago using a different kit, but it still lasted this long. I was so happy. It was made from a vintage tiki bakelite button.
This love is an ocean wide that never runs dry.
One reason I prefer the air dry clay over an epoxy resin is that you can mold it, shape it, add to it, and embed other things in it. As you will see, I embed some jewels later on. When I first make a batch of molds, I cast each one with the air dry clay and save them for fitting into a pendant later. I don't use them, but they are my mock-ups so that I know which vintage button they will fit into. While the clay is still moist and freshly out of the molds, I glue them into the base of a vintage button using Titebond Quick and Thick glue. I glue them into another larger button because I plan to use resin to strengthen the clay and give each pendant a glossy sheen. The last time I was at a craft store, I picked up this set of clay tools. They have a soft rubber edge or tip on each tool and it makes it really easy for manipulating the clay. For this delicate little seahorse mold that I made from a vintage pendant found at an estate sale, I put the mold with the clay into the freezer so that it would pop out more gently. Now I'm adding some glue to the eye area and embedding a crystal. I know the resin, when I coat it, will secure the crystal as well. Make sure to clear away or wipe off any glue that you have when you are embedding objects into your clay. Now for the fun part. I'm using DIY paints in my favorite colors and watering them down so that I get a watercolor effect on these clay pendants. DIY paint is so pigmented you can water it down quite a bit and you don't lose any of the intensity.
As a young girl, the fields were mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free, without a care in the world. I was one rich little girl, daydreamer, kidnap me. Take me back, all the way back to them days, running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot.
After each layer dried, I wiped it back slightly with a wet wipe to give my pendants that vintage feel.
We spent summers catching fireflies and winters on our skates. One big smile across my face. We used to dance our way to church on Sundays. Mama set the pace. Daydreamer, kidnap me. Take me back, all the way back to them days, running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot.
All my painted layers were now finished, so I got out my DIY liquid patina to seal off the paint, as well as prep these pendants for the mica chips and gold and copper flakes that I would add to embellish them and give them some bling. When I'm done with this step, I once again add a layer of liquid patina to secure all my beautiful glistening mica chips and flakes in place.
All alone again tonight, but you don't seem to forget about yourself. Wondering how it could go so wrong, but you didn't call for help. But let me tell you about the trees and the seas, how it's all connected. merchant bees, then all the lights, yeah, we're all affected.
To tie it all together, I got out my DIY Pennies from Heaven copper patina, as well as golden ticket patina, and edged out all the pendants. I even brushed the hardware and the jewelry bells with the patinas before I glued them on. Now I'm mixing a 2-part resin to coat all of the pendants. It will not only strengthen the clay, but it will give them a glistening finish.
That's pouring into you. And so my friend, let me tell you once again, and you know that it's true. Forget about seeing it or hearing it.
This resin is self-leveling, so I wiped away any excess that had too deep of puddles in the inset. Now it's time to get out my waxed linen thread and hand crochet the necklaces to hang these pendants from. Now this one, the tiki necklace, I already had crocheted from a previous trip, but the rest I'm taking on the road. Here I am in the beautiful Caribbean, sitting under the palm trees and finishing out my necklaces. It's the perfect little travel craft. To get inspiration, ideas, and the how-to for creating and crocheting your own necklaces, I will post the link to the class that I recently took. It was a great inspiration and it gave me lots of very clear instructions. Here are some pendants I'm now working on, cast in IOD Air Dry Clay using IOD decor molds. For the shells, I used epoxy resin. For IOD molds, air dry clay, and DIY paints, visit my website, fruitfullifestudio.com. Thanks for watching, and happy creating!